Good morning and welcome to the Daily Cyber Briefing for Thursday, the 30th of January. Where's this month going? Oh my goodness. I'm Stephen Ridgway. There is a new exploit of RDP that allows attackers to take, to at least gain information from what I can say. The article says take over a Windows browser session as well. Certainly allows you to reconstruct information from browsers, RDP sessions. The way that this works is that for performance reasons, the remote desktop client by default caches bitmaps. Now, the way that kind of functions is that it divides the screen up into I think 64 by 64 pixel bitmap fragments and stores them in a cache with names like cache 0000.bin or whatever. Those cached fragments can be reconstructed in order to extract information, and the cache fragments themselves are not particularly well secured. So this is something to be aware of if you're using RDP sessions for anything which involves, I guess, access to sensitive information or sensitive data. Reading between the lines, I'm guessing that anything which can be seen on the screen in an RDP session is getting cached one way or another, and those caches are being held client-side and are vulnerable to being reconstructed. Now, that means if you can see it on the screen, you can reconstruct it on the screen. Including, I'm guessing, usernames and so on and so forth. So how you would access the cache, it appears that it's not a particularly well secured cache. I'm guessing you would need to have the ability to at least have read access to the drive, but there are lots of ways in which that could happen. Also, if you are, for example, an administrator running a machine, looking after a machine, you don't necessarily want users on that machine to be able to reconstruct exactly what you've done on there. So, yeah, it is fairly poor architecture in my mind. I can see why. I mean, RDP, historically, RDP has been slow and clunky, and there's probably an entire generation going, no, isn't this really good? I really like it. Well, yeah, that's kind of true. You weren't around doing this stuff when it was slow and clunky and horrible and insecure. Kind of cool now, I do agree. There are tools that have been developed which can greatly assist with piecing together graphical fragments into actionable intelligence. One of them, RDP Cache Stitcher, has been developed by France's cybersecurity agency, the ANSSI, which I'm not even going to try to pronounce in French. So, yeah, be aware of this. Now, in order to mitigate the risks of this, the first thing to do is to disable persistent bitmap caching and take the hit on performance. If security matters to you, that won't be particularly an issue. If that is an issue, then I think you can assume that you're not taking, security isn't, this particular risk isn't the top of your risk profile. Do make sure you risk assess it. I may have said this before. Make sure you have a good understanding of business risk before you do anything in this space. Other things you can do, well, monitoring RDP sessions, restricting privileges, applying updates, the usual sort of stuff. But I think really the key to dealing with this is to disable persistent bitmap caching if you are concerned that your sessions, and let's be clear, sorry, I didn't make it very clear, these are persistent. This is a persistent cache, right? So it's not something which assists during the session and is then deleted later. It's a persistent cache. So it sits on the client side waiting to see whether any of this stuff is worth reusing later. I can see the point, right? As a loss of your screen estate is repetitive, the screen backgrounds, a lot of your desktop is the same all the time. So if you can just cache it and reuse it, then it is significantly faster than effectively sending all the pixels all the time. So I can see the logic behind it. But again, with all of these things, if you don't need it, don't do it. And in this particular case, it looks like it's been demonstrated to be accessible by people that you wouldn't necessarily expect to be able to get access to it. Okay. In other matters, 89% of AI-powered APIs rely on insecure authentication mechanisms. API security is something that has been on my worry list for a very long time, even before even starting up TSC with Eliza. This has been one of those areas where I've been predicting it will be the next major area of vulnerabilities. And I think it probably has been, but it's just people have missed it because it's gone on in the background. The nature of APIs is they're not terribly exciting. What you could do with them is, but looking at them, as it were, isn't. Excuse me. APIs are increasingly important because that is the way by which applications access AI. So AI is very API based. So it is disappointing to see that so little has been done in the way of securing APIs against attack. So if this is a particular area that is pertinent to what you're dealing with, it's worth having a quick look at this article and having a think about it. Only 11% of APIs tested in this particular study had robust security measures in place. 57% of AI-powered APIs were externally accessible, and 89% of those relied on insecure authentication methods. So it is clearly an area where there is scope for improvement. If you are running APIs, if your systems are accessed via APIs of any kind, make sure that you are thinking carefully about how those APIs are secured and how, at the very least, that make sure that you're using reliably secure authentication methods against those APIs. And then finally from me, a couple of things DeepSeek related, as it's been in the news and all over, both for mainstream media and the InfoSec press over the last few days. Experts at Wiz Research have identified a publicly exposed ClickHouse database belonging to DeepSeek, which was vulnerable to full takeover, full control over database operations, giving access to information such as chat history, secret keys, back-end details, million lines of log streams, so on and so forth. So rather than spend a lot of time going into the details of this particular vulnerability, the GB Hackers article actually shows there is some URLs where this particular database, through which this particular database at least was at the time of writing, accessible. Oh, not very articulate today, am I? I think the key thing is bear in mind if something looks to be too good to be true, it's probably too good to be true. So all this wonderful, DeepSeek means all this investment in the US has been wasted, blah, blah, blah. There is growing evidence that there is certainly a significant amount of, they call it distilling, as in taking what something else has done and reusing it. Isn't that theft? I don't know. Well, whatever. But DeepSeek is not all that it's been cracked up to be. I suspect that the hype has been influenced by organizations who specialize in disruptive information. And it probably does do what it says. How it got to doing what it says is another matter. However, it does appear that not a lot of effort's been put into securing it. So, as I said before, we won't be using DeepSeek at TSC, and I would strongly recommend that you have a serious think about your risk profile and your tolerance to risk before you start using DeepSeek for anything that may have critical business information or whatever you are doing. And then finally, also on the subject of DeepSeek, a little bit of almost light entertainment, I think, from seclists.org. Very short article, did make me smile. Basically, DeepSeek writes textbook insecure code. It's a good article. If you are curious as to the quality of code that comes out of AIs, this isn't the only one that comes up with stuff that's just awful. It surprises me how you can get cross-site scripting into something which is only effectively is only 2 lines of code, but they have managed to do it. So if you are using DeepSeek to help you write code, just be aware of it. If you're a coder, you'll have a laugh looking at this one. Steve, from our lot, Steve, you might have a laugh looking at this. Raf, I know you listening to this podcast, I think you will also smile when you see it. Anyway, look, have a read, have a laugh, and just think about what you're doing. Right, that is enough from me for today. I hope you have a good Thursday, and I shall speak to you all again tomorrow morning.